Predatory insects involve those that are basically carnivores. They're heterotroph. They consume another animal, a prey, in order to make a living. A predator can be defined very simply as a carnivore that kills its prey immediately and consumes usually greater than one prey over its lifetime. They eat one, they move over, they eat another one. Here are some examples of predators, including this soldier bug, spine soldier bug, Penetomid feeding on a caterpillar here with its stylet mouth parts, or these ants taking down a caterpillar. Very generally, predators tend to be bigger than their food, and they overwhelm their prey, and that's how they consume them. They have chewing mouth parts, and they often consume their prey just by ripping it up and ingesting the nutrients and resources that are found within the bodies. There are some predators that actually consume their prey using a form of digestion that's referred to as extraoral digestion, like these Pentomids here, which will pierce an insect and then secrete salivary enzymes or other sorts of proteins into the body of into the carcass of its prey, basically making it liquefy and digesting it outside of the mouth, outside of the body, which is why it's referred to as extraoral digestion, which then they suck up afterwards. Not a very common way of predators actually feeding on their prey. Predators tend to be generalists compared to their prey, although there could be some that specialize on particular groups. We heard about this in Dr. O'Leary's talk about some lady beetles, for example, being scale specialists, whereas others may feed on all kinds of different things. But for the most part, predators tend to be generalists. Here's an example of a very rare specialist carabid beetle that actually feeds on snails, which is kind of cool. Predators tend to have three general modes of hunting. One is where they forage widely looking for their prey. Others are sit and pursue, where they'll wait for something to come by and then chase it down. And others are sit and wait kinds of predators, where they are very still, maybe they're even camouflaged, and they will pounce upon something if it comes within striking range. Usually, active predators will feed on things that are sedentary. If both of these were sedentary, they would never encounter each other, and that's not a very good thing. On the other hand, sedentary predators often feed on very active prey that have a greater likelihood of encounter with them. So that's kind of a syndrome that you often see in these types of behaviors. Parasitoids are really cool. They have a strange lifestyle of feeding on another organism like this. So they have a predator-like mortality on their host, but they're parasitic as the immatures. That is, the immature forms are what feed on the host, whereas the adults are free living. They move around looking for a potential host. They tend to be specialized, and they also develop very rapidly relative to other beneficial predators, parasitoids. And they often can be the same size as the host, which is different than the life history strategies of predators. They can be either endo or ectoparasitic. Here's an example of an endoparasitoid that actually is stinging an aphid. It will then lay its eggs inside of the aphid, a singular egg, and the larva here of the parasitoid, which you can see through this transmitted light, is feeding from the inside out of the host. When the host, or when the larva gets to a particular size and it's ready to pupate, it actually induces a change in the body of these aphids so that they become leathery like this. They're often referred to as mummies in this stage. And inside of the body of this mummy the larva pupates. After pupation, the adult emerges, and in order to get out of the mummified carcass here, they will cut a circular hatch opening and pop out as adults like this, and the cycle actually repeats itself. Parasitoids, because of this very intense association either on top of or within the body of their host, tend to have a very high degree of specialization. They feed on either a single life stage of a particular group of insects, and often just on a very subset of insects. They need to of their hosts. They need to find them, and they need to overcome their immune responses to be able to feed on them. And again, a larva that is parasitizing a host only feeds on one host. They don't need to move around from host to actually do this. And on the other hand, the female will oviposit on many hosts, and she may be responsible for the death of many different host individuals. So predators and parasitoids can have comparable ecological effects, but using very different life history strategies. Some terms that you'll encounter in the parasitoid world, you might want to look some of these up. There are various strategies for oviposition. The ovipositor is a modified series of sclerites that allow the parasitoid to inject eggs either on top of or inside of the host. Sometimes the ovipositor also is used to deliver venoms that paralyze or otherwise immobilize a host. So there are venom glands associated with this. And the eggs, which are held in the abdomen, in the reproductive tissues, literally have to be squeezed into these long tubes in order to these long sausages in order for them to traverse into and through the ovipositor and into the body of the host. You can think of this as taking like a water balloon and stretching it and squeezing it, and then as soon as it pops out into the host body, it kind of swells up into its original shape. A different type of oviposition strategy occurs with some types of parasitoids, including these flies, that actually will lay tiny little eggs on the surface of a plant that is then eaten by a caterpillar, and the egg enters the digestive tract where it will actually hatch, and then the larva actually burrows in through the midgut into the body of the hosts. Other types of parasitoids might actually glue their eggs on the outside, and then they will the larvae will burrow their way in. The parasitoid life history strategy, as you can see from this, is not restricted to a particular group of insects. In fact, parasitoids can be found in flies, they can be found in beetles, they can be found in the Hymenoptera, although the Hymenoptera probably have the most widely developed and diversified species that use this particular strategy. But it's certainly not a singular occurrence of this particular life history strategy. There are nematodes that are not insects that can also act as biological control agents. Nematodes are basically these long filamentous worms, either in the family Steinernemmatids here, or in a different family that I'll talk about in a second. There are some groups of insects that are quite susceptible and very readily attacked by nematodes. And nematodes tend to work well in wet, moist environments because this is how they actually get around and are mobile. Some of them, like the Heterorhabditis, have an association with the microbes that actually are the organisms that do the killing of the host. So the nematodes will actually pierce the skin, the cuticle of the host, get in there, either moving in through the spiracles or through the anus or through the mouth. They get into the body, and then when they do this, they will actually release the microbes, the bacteria that they're associated with, and that's actually what causes the mortality. And quite readily reared in laboratory situations, which then can be used for things like inoculative and augmentative types of biological control programs. Fungi can also be mortality agents of insects. Here's some examples of the reproductive structures of fungi that are emerging from insects that have succumbed to the fungi that are developing inside of them. These big structures here are basically the mushroom bodies of the fungus. Here's some cordyceps, which have these crazy structures here coming out of these beetles. Fungi are one of the few organisms that can actually break through the cuticle directly of an insect. The chitin is very hard to break down, and fungi are one of the things that have actually figured out how to do that. Once they've entered the cuticle, then the hyphae and the vegetative bodies actually are what consume the insect. When the insect is overcome, then you will see the mushroom bodies that actually come out. In the process of consuming the insects and of affecting their physiology, the behavior of the insects might also change. Well, they'll climb up and hold on to structures, and kind of cling on to different things. They also climb vertical surfaces, go to the tops of trees. And the idea is that this could be adaptive to the fungus, which spreads by spreading spores, which randomly kind of move through the environment and find another potential host that way. There are all kinds of bacterial pathogens that will attack insects, including spore-forming and non-spore-forming microbes like these that you can see here attacking these Japanese beetles. There's also spore-forming microbes like this Bacillus species, Bacillus thuringiensis. This is a soil-dwelling species that, in the process of its life cycle, actually produces crystals that within them have proteins that are toxic to insects. These proteins here, when they enter, if they're ingested by an insect, they will enter the midgut, which tends to be very alkaline. It has a very high pH. And these proteins, these crystalline structures, will dissolve, and inside of them will be a protein of a particular size that is what will bind to the midgut of the insect. This is kind of a slice through of an insect midgut here. And as it binds to the midgut, it basically causes and as it binds to the midgut, it will actually cause a series of sodium potassium channels to actually open up, and liquids will start to flow from the hemolymph, which is on this side, into the lumen of the midgut, creating a nutrient. And by doing so, the insects basically begin to lose liquids and have a massive bout of diarrhea, which basically kills them. These open sodium-potassium channels also create conduits for pathogens to actually move into the body of into the hemolymph, and that's another way that insects can die, is through these secondary infections. BT, or Bacillus thuringiensis, has been the cornerstone of many IPM programs, particularly against flies, but also against beetles and other groups. And one of the most common, one of the biggest success stories actually has been against river blindness that is caused by these filarial worms that infect people, and these worms actually will migrate into the eyes and make people blind. And they became resistant. The flies, these simuliids, is what actually spreads the worms. And the flies became resistant to organophosphate pesticides, and the transition to BT toxins actually has been really successful at suppressing these populations in tropical parts of the world. The final group I want to talk about is viruses. There are many different kinds. Nuclear polyhedrosis viruses, NPVs, replicate within the nucleus of a host. And here you can see some of these occlusion bodies here. These are the virus particles that you can see through electron microscopy. And this is what happens when something like a gypsy moth caterpillar gets infected by the spores of this is what a gypsy moth caterpillar looks like once it's been infected by NPV. And this oozing body here now has millions of virus particles that are entering the environment, which have the capacity to create a pandemic in high populations of caterpillars. Baculoviruses are probably the best studied group. They result in these epizootics, which are these sweeping through of populations and high mortality events. They're transmittable by ingestion. So if there's a virus on the surface of a leaf and a caterpillar is feeding on it, this is how they can come in. And they are very common in both natural systems, but also in augmentation biocontrol systems, because it's easy to actually rear these viruses in the hosts of caterpillars in a laboratory situation. And because they are very tied to the cellular biology of their particular host, they have a very narrow host range. So these aren't the kind of viruses that could infect people or mammals or plants or anything like that. I'll skip this part. I'll skip the details for you. But if you're interested, there are some resources in the bonus section for this week on all these different groups of natural enemies, and could allow you to get into more of the details.